Panelist, it's Todd McClay. He's Minister for Revenue, Associate Minister for Health of New Zealand. And he was active in the European Union before being appointed ambassador to the European Union. Apart from his political career, he has founded and owned a number of successful businesses. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Kia ora, no tātou, tēnā koutou katoa. Bonjour. Good morning, everybody, and can I thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today, addressing this valuable forum on such an important topic. And I really am honoured on behalf of my government and Parliament to be amongst such distinguished company, both here on the platform and amongst the audience. Madam Chair, as you said, I probably spent around 15 years here in Brussels working in the European Parliament and also as Ambassador to the EU for Niue and the Cook Islands when those two small countries joined the ACP group and the Cotonou Agreement. And therefore I'm very familiar with the EU's important work in human rights and the dedication to advancing women's rights. And it's a real pleasure to come back to a place that I got to call home for so long. Likewise, New Zealand has a strong commitment to equality. I want to recognise last night that New Zealand was the Oceania recipient of the Closing the Gap Award here in the Parliament in recognition of our ranking in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report. And as well, this year marks New Zealand's celebration of 120 years of women's suffrage. And indeed, yesterday, the 28th of November, 120 years ago, in 1893, was when we first held elections where women in New Zealand were able to vote. At that same time, the first woman was elected to public office anywhere in the Commonwealth, and it was a mayor in New Zealand. The first woman elected to our Parliament in New Zealand took some 26 years after the vote was given in 1919. We had our first woman cabinet minister in 1947, our first governor general in 1990, our first female prime minister in 1997, our first chief justice who was a woman in 1999, and our first elected prime minister in 1999 as well, and the first speaker of our parliament in 2007. Today in our Parliament of 121 MPs, 39 are women MPs. The highest was 41 in the last term of Parliament, and we rank around 21st in terms of worldwide women in parliaments and 10th amongst 34 countries of the OECD. Now, Madam Chair, I say all of this not to suggest that we've done enough, but to say to you that we've made a start in New Zealand. Can I recognise Larissa Wall, a Member of Parliament from New Zealand who's travelled here to be with you for all of this week. Some of you may have been to New Zealand. It's at least a 24-hour flight and it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night there. So Larissa, as was I, are delighted that we can at least be awake with you at the moment. What I want to say though is today our commitment to the advancement of women is reflected in the strong position women in both public and the private sector face. I remember one of my parliamentary colleagues, I came into Parliament 5 or 6 years ago, who was appointed Minister of Women's Affairs, and during the global financial crisis I remember her reflecting that of all of the companies listed on our share market in New Zealand, those that had a woman sitting on the board actually fared very well through that period of time. And the companies that didn't have a woman female representation were many of the companies that didn't do so well and that had great challenges. She then went out to promote this to the stock market and to New Zealand companies to promote the idea that they too should be looking to include more women in the governance of their companies. But she very quickly learnt the thing about New Zealand, it's not just New Zealand, many countries, is that when you go and tell somebody to do something because it's good for them, they use all of their energy to fight against you. But wisely she worked out, since most of the boards she was trying to affect were full of men, if she was able to convince them it was their idea, they'd get on and do the job very quickly. And she was quite successful in that. As a small, ethically diverse and fair-minded nation, we very much like the EU remain committed to human rights and fairness. We prefer inclusive policies and negotiated solutions both domestically and in our international relations. This is reflected, I think, in our position in the United Nations, where we, I believe, have played a leadership role on many issues: development, decolonisation, disabilities, and, importantly for today, topic gender issues. 120 years ago, as I mentioned, we made history in granting universal suffrage first, and we are today still, I believe, walking the walk on towards equality. One of my responsibilities in Parliament is Associate Minister of Health in our government, and I want to take an opportunity to address in particular the question of equality, equal access to health and social services. We've heard other talk today about whether regulation is the best way to address inequalities and access to health care and other services. Instead of delving deeply into strictly regulation, because I think sometimes we pass regulations or laws in part make ourselves feel good because we think we've done something about an issue, but we don't always have the effect we hope to upon the problem that we're trying to fix. So what we need to do as decision makers and as politicians is affect social change as much as legislative change. So legislation has a role to play, but if it was just about legislation, all the problems of the world would be fixed and would have nothing to do. So I want to talk a little more broadly about what we've done here in New Zealand. One of the policy frameworks developed and implemented in New Zealand as part of the government's focus on families, alongside a coalition partner, a Māori party, is a holistic approach to health and social services, a program. We call it whānau ora. It's based on an age-old principle that it takes a village to raise a child, and the program works to empower communities and extend families, to support families within community context rather than individuals in an institutional context. While the program has a focus on increasing predominantly Māori access to health and social services, it's available to all New Zealanders in need, and it's about one car going up a driveway to provide the help that all of that family needs, rather than those individuals needing to go out and find help for themselves. And we know for those less advantaged, more often than not, they don't find their way to that support. It has a broad co-benefit for increasing women's access for women to health. This includes greater access in a culturally appropriate manner to traditional women's health services such as cervical smears and mammography, as well as greater access to social services for the prevention of family violence and access to advice on, for instance, things like stopping smoking, whilst providing outcomes for families and the community and programs and so on. Madam Chair, I hear you tapping, and so I'll do exactly what I'm told. I want to finish, I suppose, by saying that the topic we've been asked to address today is that all men are created equal, and so are women. And so, not as a representative government, but as a member of Parliament, I want to say that I want to go further and say that men and women are equal, and that as policy makers and leaders, it's our job to ensure that so many more people accept this statement, both in practice and in reality, and together we still have much work to do together. When considering and challenging some of the historic norms of leadership, I think we must think of our wives and our daughters. My daughter, I want for her to have equal opportunity in anything she wants to do, to go on and lead our country, should she choose to, because she's capable and because she's equal, and to achieve because of who she is, not being disadvantaged or held back because of the perception of what she is. So can I say thank you for the opportunity to come here today. It's a real privilege. I'm so glad I was in Europe and able to join you, and wish you the very best for the rest of your discussions. Thank you.